One of the people who's taking leadership on this issue is Representative John Bell. Before we turn to him, I just want to give you a little bit of data to back up the bill that he's working on and make sure that it's something that we have a little bit of context on. In North Carolina as a state in 2020, it was the second wettest year that we've had in history. And this is something that's happening across the state. Since 1950, every county in North Carolina has had at least 2 major flood events. And there are ideas out there. The Coastal Federation has made a series of recommendations about what can be done. They point to things like permeable pavement, which is something that the Sierra Nevada Mills River Brewery has tried in the West, and in Swansboro town government has tried that. They emphasize comprehensive planning, statewide watershed management, nature-based solutions. All those are things that they're lifting up, and right now, the state's just trying to get its arms around it. And one of the people who's leading those efforts is Representative John Bell. Representative Bell, thank you for being with us.
Yeah, it's nice to be with you. Thank you for having me.
You're sponsoring a very large bill that has made it into the House budget, is now part of the negotiation that's going on at a state level. What started off as House Bill 500 is now part of this budget. And as an elected official, it must really hurt for you to see what happens during times of disaster, whether they're in the mountains or in your own district.
Well, unfortunately, over the last, I've been in the General Assembly. This is my 5th term. And since I've been elected, we've experienced Hurricane Matthew, Hurricane Florence. We actually were negotiating the disaster relief package for Hurricane Florence when Tropical Storm Michael came through and hit. It came through North Carolina, but it was devastating to my friends in a place I actually used to live down in Panama City Beach, Florida. And then you had Hurricane Isaias. It just goes on. And so what we have looked at with House Bill 500 is how can we put forth a comprehensive approach to flood mitigation. We know that $1 we spend today in mitigation efforts really saves about $7 or $8 in disaster response in the future. And so just to put it in perspective, we've been very blessed in our state to have a very strong rainy day reserve to be able to address issues and to help not just help the coastline, but also our friends in the western part of the state when we were addressing floods. So we put about over $3 billion worth of state response to try to serve the needs of the folks that have been devastated by these disasters. But my good friend Chuck McGrady, who's no longer in the General Assembly, him and I have been working very close together the last couple of years to put together a mitigation strategy. And when he retired last year, he officially passed the torch over to me. And so we're moving forward on that, and that's what resulted in House Bill 500.
So we're showing some highlights of the bill. I wonder if you could just talk about some of the different strategies that are embedded in this, and people can see on the screen at least some of the big picture elements that you're talking about.
So when we put House Bill 500 forward, we knew that House Bill 500 would not pass as is. We knew it was going to be merged into the budget and overall process because of significant appropriation that goes along with it. What we wanted to do is put every idea that we could possibly think of that was brought to us on the table for consideration. And that's why you saw the bill being as large as it is. And so our strategy is can you look at a large project effort of what we call shovel-ready projects. And these projects are dams in some smaller areas throughout the state that have just been neglected, or frankly, the small municipalities and communities have not had the funding to correct those problems. And so that's a portion of the project. We looked at home ownership with Habitat for Humanity. Can we work with Habitat for Humanity along with what's already going on with Rebuild NC to put housing in areas that more low income housing, working class housing, get them out of the flood areas and put them in areas where we will not have to replace those houses or do a buyout with them. We also looked at issues on the coast with issues in the Piedmont, and also looked at issues in the western part of the state. And can we put a reserve in place so when we do have a situation like Hurricane Fred that came through, when we do have a Hurricane Michael, do we have the resources to be able to go into that reserve help our Department of Transportation, help our emergency management, but also do FEMA matches. So you saw a lot of that. What we have agreed to as of last week, and I was able to announce it this weekend at an event I was at, is that the House and Senate did come together over the end of last week and the weekend and agree to put forth a $300 million flood mitigation package for the state of North Carolina. It's the largest one that's ever been done. And the key for this would be is to put a blueprint in place that we're able to address mitigation efforts, and then for us to actually follow the plan. It doesn't work when you've got multiple entities trying to do multiple plans, and this community is doing this community is doing that. The people at the lower end of the Cape Fear River is doing this, the people at the upper levels doing this, but to put a comprehensive effort in place and to put a blueprint on how we address flood mitigation here in the state. And so I'm excited that we're doing that. My good friend, Senator Jim Perry and Senator Danny Britt down in Robinson County, and with Senator Brent Jackson, we were working on this, and I've had a lot of input from not just a lot of coastal legislators, Representative Pat McElrath, Representative Charlie Miller, Representative Ted Davis. I've met with our Western delegation last week to look at what happened there with Representative Jake Johnson and Representative Pless and so on, Representative Brian Turner. And so this is a total state effort. It's a bipartisan effort, but we know it's an effort that needs to be done. And I'm glad that Senator Berger and Speaker Moore understand the urgency and the importance of this, and that we're actually going to move forward with this to have a true blueprint for the state.
We were talking just a little bit earlier about how disasters bring together people who might not normally agree on a lot of political issues. And this bill that you introduced has been endorsed by the Nature Conservancy and the Conservation Fund. And it seems like a lot of what used to be called common sense solutions, but it's also a bunch of different ideas that represent some of the developing best practices that are out there. How did you synthesize through all the ideas that are out there and decide which ones you thought were going to be most important and most impactful?
Well, I joked with a lot of our folks on the environmental side, because normally they're the folks that attack me or send me letters of record requests in order to sue us. So it was very interesting to have everybody at the table working together for a common cause. But it does show you how important the issue is, and that, when the water's coming downhill, or the water's moving through your neighborhood, or the water's rising underneath your feet, it doesn't matter what political party you are. It's just an issue that affects everybody. And so we looked at recommendations from the Department of Emergency Management, who has done some studies. We took in consideration some nature-based solutions that the Conservancy and others have been put forward. And what we want to do, it goes back to what has happened in North Carolina, is we've had multiple people doing multiple projects, but there's never been one person, one entity with one plan. And that's where we got to get to. We have to put all these ideas together in a plan that works for our state, and not this piece over here, but actually put the puzzle together. And that's what our attempt to do was with House Bill 500, and what we will do with this $300 million package we're going to put forward in a few weeks.
How do you find the sweet spot between the proper role of state government? Obviously, FEMA has declared a disaster for Western North Carolina for this latest storm. Local government has clear responsibilities. A lot of businesses are stepping in. How do you, as a state legislator, assess the state's role in this? Is it that planning function, that comprehensive planning function?
It's a part of the overall planning, but the only way this is successful is that if we all work together. And in order for us to work together, we have to communicate. And so if you look at House Bill 500 and then what was put into budget, we have a lot of small towns in eastern North Carolina and throughout North Carolina that frankly do not have the staff. And I know the mayor knows as well. When you're looking at little towns like Fairbluff or Seven Springs in my area, when you've got a town board of 3 or 4 people and one part-time staff member, you don't have the staff to be able to come in and administer these grants and navigate through this process. So we put forth funding, working together with the League of Municipalities, the Council of Governments, and the County Commissioner Association to actually help these towns have the resources to be able to work with us in this process. Because at the end of the day, the mayor knows his town a whole lot better than I do. And so we have to have a collective process with this. So it's the state's responsibility, in my opinion, to put forth the blueprint, to put forth the plan, to put the initial funding out, and then partner with our counties and municipalities to make sure that the plan is executed. And so their input has been very vital in this process.
Representative John Bell, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate your taking the time, and best of luck in working this compromise piece of legislation through.
Absolutely, and thank y'all for bringing the issue to the forefront, and continued prayers to my friends in Western North Carolina. Unfortunately, we've experienced this a lot in Eastern North Carolina, but just know that regardless of where we are in the state, we stand ready to help everyone.
All right. Thank you, Representative Bell.
Thank you. Have a good day.